Om Haranmaye Pare Koshe Virajan Brahmanishkalam Tachubram Jyotisham Jyoti Tajadatma Vidho Vidhu Om Shantihi Shantihi Shantihi. Shining like burnished gold, powerful as a thunderbolt, highest and deepest, the core intelligence of living beings, heartless and indivisible, ever pure, free of all defects, the essence of everything, which all beings seek, either knowingly or unknowingly. There shines Brahman. May that Brahman protect us, sustain us, and illumine our thinking process, free us from fault finding, and deliver us the essence of the teachings. Om, peace, peace, peace. May peace be unto us, and may peace be unto all. Om Hari Om, Hari Om, Hari Om Tat Sat. So we meet today for our second class on the Vajrasuchika Upanisad. That's a lightning bolt driven by a thunder bolt, which is penetrating ignorance in the mind when you bring it in to like a diamond needle. That's the subtitle of the Upanishad, or the meaning of Vajrasuchika. And today I happen to have the full chart with me. I wasn't able to print out last week, so you were working with handouts. But now, of course, on the screen with everyone attending, and also here in the classroom with a few here, you'll see the actual chart blown up in all its glory. And you can better see then, I get my copy here, better see that diamond needle in the middle of the chart with the Atman at the end and the Vajrasuchika itself penetrating and making a hole in that bubble of ignorance that's the black egg there, as it were. And last week we started into looking at all the teachings which were particular to this particular Upanishad, and I gave you most of the information about it then anyway. And one of the 20 or 22 foundational Upanishads coming from Sama Veda and other pieces of information. It's also relatively current Upanishads. Some of them are so ancient. And so all that information has been given, but the real deep import of it, we started to look into and got so far as to read maybe some few slokas out of it, of the few slokas that are actually there, just to repeat those. And we could probably even read it from the Upanishad itself. I shall set forth for you the Vajrasuchika, diamond needle, which pierces ignorance, rebukes the ignorance, and ornaments those who have the wisdom eye. The Smritis, that's the secondary scriptures, affirm, as they follow the Vedas, that the Brahmana is the most important of the four castes. It must be stated who is a Brahmana, that is, who is a knower of Brahman. Is it the self, the body, the class, knowledge, action, or virtue? We looked at that much and began to look into those six contentions that the Upanishad has about the caste system, which we looked at last week in two charts called Varnashrama and Dharmashrama, if you remember. We saw that there were those four castes of Brahmana and the warrior, the Kshatriya it's called, and then the merchant, and then the worker. So these four castes, the Upanishad seems to be making a point that, of course, the Atman is in all beings. It's also in all things, by the way, if you're looking into the definition of what's sentient and what's insentient. As far as how Western thinking goes, we know that sentiency is in everything, in nature, for instance. But in Upanishads, sentiency is only in the Atman, it's only in Brahman, it's only in God, and everything else is insentient. That's why it passes and changes all the time. it's mutable. There, I was sent today a picture of and a quote from a scientist. Whenever I teach quantum physics, he says, I feel like I'm speaking the Vedanta. That's a quote from one of our scientists of the day. And it says, just like Adi Shankara taught back in the Upanishads. So that's what we're studying right now, these Upanishads, which have affirmed for us the mutable nature of things. So it's good to have an awakening to a fact that matter is unreal, as the scientist was putting it in that quote. But after you have that awakening that all of this is unreal, then you have to go to the teaching of mutability. And after that, you take a step to immutability. And after that, you take a step to immortality. So basically, you've got 4 steps there to take from an awakening, like all of this is unreal. So that Vedanta actually goes much deeper than just a spiritual awakening, is what I'm saying here. So I have to make that comment as a long time adherent to the Advaita Vedanta school myself, being initiated into that and so forth. So with that said, then we can approach these teachings of the Vajrasuchika Upanishad and find out that at those stages of awakening, there's still some false superimpositions over the mind, some covering power, as the Tantra calls it, the avarana shakti, it's called in that particular darshana. And so those need to be pierced through. So that's why it's not enough just to have the awakening that all this is unreal, although that's a good step, a first step, especially for a materialist, a person who had been a materialist before and didn't have any other opening to in the mind for that kind of higher understanding that Vedanta and other darshanas propose. But also it's good then to acquire that tool and practice with self-effort for a long time with the atmosphere of faith and devotion, the Upanishads say, and acquire that diamond needle and then pierce through all of these false superimpositions that are still there because you were a materialist or you did not know the truth for lifetimes. And all of a sudden in this lifetime, you have an awakening and you think, you go beyond what's the humorous expression they're using now, woo-woo. If you believe in God, then it's woo-woo. So particularly if you're understanding the truth of spiritual life and so forth. So that kind of awakening then, of course, goes beyond a person who's so limited like that, dead set against anything that's truly sentient and is still worshiping the insentient. That's of course worse than even idol worship, because at least in idol worship you believe there's some presence behind the objects, behind the image, in the divine pictures and so forth. But if otherwise you don't even know that there's anything other than matter, and that's where your people are thinking they're born and they die, they're born and they die. It's all in matter that's going on. In nature, Krishna says in the Gita. But birth and death doesn't go on in the soul. Your soul is eternal and birthless and deathless. Yamrichor Nashanka Name Janti Veda, that same Adi Shankara says in the Nirvana Shatkam, that I've never had a death. Nam Richor means no death. Name Jati Beta, because I was never born in the first place. The body was born. The brain was born. A senses formed out of those. And but myself, that was I was in a detached witness consciousness watching the whole process. You want to call that woo-woo? Then go ahead and overlook your true nature and forget about religion and spirituality and thousands of souls, including Jesus, Buddha, Krishna, and others who have come back to tell us about these great truths. Then we'll just have to say what is to be done for you. So when we study 108 Upanishads, which differ from those kind of worldly opinions, we come upon these great metaphors like diamond needle that penetrates ignorance. So if you can see there on the chart, that you're looking at, the top quote, we can repeat that. I shall set forth for you the teaching of the diamond needle, which deflects the ignorance that insinuates itself upon the human mind. It soon becomes the most precious ornament possessed by the seeker after truth and freedom, who thereafter gains success in opening the wisdom eye. That's my own translation of the first two slokas. That's why I'm rereading it. It puts it in a little better context. In fact, we can even sing that. Agyanatimirandasya Jnana Jana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Akanda Mandalakaram Vyaptam Yena Characharam Tatpadam Darshatang Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Gurur Brahma Gurur Vishnu Gurur Devo Maheshwara Gurureva Param Brahma Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Gurur Sakshi Param Brahma Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. As the Guru Stotram puts it, you have opened my inner eye of wisdom. That's what Jnana Chakshu means. And the whole verse translates as manifesting as the mother of all knowledge, both secular and spiritual. You dispel the illusion of ignorance and grant the precious boon of subtle insight. Your powerful presence has opened to my inner eye of wisdom. Reverent salutations to the ultimate Guru. And this other sloka I sang, I offer continual prostrations to the blessed Guru, who has thus kindled the fire of self-knowledge within me, burning away the numerous karmas that have accumulated over past lifetimes. Reverent salutations to the ultimate Guru. So those two slokas have to do, out of the 12 slokas there, have to do with this penetration of ignorance by the teacher giving spiritual wisdom that opens the inner eye. That's that Suchika. That's that diamond needle that penetrates through all. So that's what we want to reiterate to get us started on this Upanishad. Now, last week, we began to look into some of the teachings pertinent to this, starting off with what the Upanishad was saying here. Who is the Brahmana? And I think we read so far that the soul is not a Brahmana because the soul is the same in all bodies, past and future. The same person takes many bodies according to karma. The body is not the Brahmana either. The body is the same from the Chandala to the highest caste. That is, from the untouchable to the highest caste. The body is the same. The soul is the same. And it doesn't matter whether you capitalize the soul or not there. The body-mind mechanism is the same in all. And the Atman also, of course, the same in all. Because it's made of the 5 elements, which is the same in all beings, and is seen to have old age, death, birth, and so forth, and the same in all beings. There's no fixity of color, such as a Brahmana is white, Kshatriya is red, Vaishya is yellow, Sudra is black. So race and class goes beyond that. Also, there's this there's this proof. If the father's body is cremated and it were real, then the son may be guilty of killing a Brahmana. So that's why beings can come and go, be born and die, and there will be no change in the Atman for one. But it's the level of consciousness that's going to have to be considered in terms of the forecasts we looked at last week. So these are all really good teachings to break through this idea that the Brahma might be the self, the Brahman might be a body, the knower of Brahman might be a particular class only, restricted of all others. It might be the knowledge in the Brahmana that makes them a knower of Brahman, but we know that literate people have also gotten full realization. I was mentioning some of the Zen generations of Zen teachers through that tradition that were illiterate people and of different walks of life. And also there's the question of action and virtue and vice. So about the body and all the rest, the Upanishad goes on, and this is new ground for us. Nor is a particular class a knower of Brahman. There are many classes within classes. Many are the great sages that have lived, and they've taken different births and been of different walks of life. For instance, and those are listed here, if you can see them on the chart. Vajrasuchika was born of a deer. Kaushika was born from a reed. Jambuka from a jackal. Valmiki out of an anthill. Vyasa from a fisher girl. Gautama from a hare's back. Vashishta from Urvasi. Agastya of a pot, according to tradition. These are not Brahmanas by birth, but by their knowledge. But nor is knowledge a Brahmana either. Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, and others have knowledge, all three of them. That's why secular, I just chanted, secular and spiritual, those wisdom, if it's given to you by an illumined soul, will open the wisdom eye, Jnana Chakshu. And it doesn't matter who you are, where you are, and what class you are, what caste you are, how much knowledge you have or how little knowledge you have. When that event occurs, then everyone sees the same Atman because they are the same Atman. The beautiful universal foundation of all the Upanishads. That's why we loved it when Swami Vivekananda brought the Vedanta here, because born, many of us in the conventional religious perspectives that we were sinners or that God and mankind were two different things, they would never meet. The non-duality wasn't there and given to us. And when Vivekananda brought this lion's roar of Vedanta with the declaration that like Christ said, I and my Father are one, and that all beings have that same consciousness within them, both in terms of content. It's the same unalterable consciousness in everyone, because, as I just chanted, it's indivisible and free of all taint. I started out chanting about Haran Maye Pare Koshe, that light in everyone. So it's the same consciousness in all beings, and when people hear that, then they start to wake up finally to the truth. And the Upanishad then goes on to say, nor is karma indicative of who's a Brahmana, who isn't, because all creatures are seen to have similar karma. For instance, prarabdha. So even the illumined souls have to come here by some karma. So they're seen to have some prarabdha karma, which they're working with. So even the case of an avatar like Sri Ramakrishna, I had a few desires to fulfill, like to be the king of the devotees. So his desires, of course, were very, very high and very pure. But nonetheless, something has to bring you back into the body-mind mechanism in order, if you want to help others. And nor is a man of virtue necessarily a Brahmana, because there are many givers of gold, like the Kshatriyas. They have to make their way by joining armies and killing other people. So they also have been given this great knowledge in the past of Vedanta. Some of the great givers of teachers and gurus were Kshatriyas. And I think Vivekananda was a Kshatriya caste, actually. So this means that there must be beings who don't possess that highest traditional virtue necessarily. That's not necessarily a requirement for becoming a Nora of Brahman. That knowledge of Brahman can occur to all beings and should. And so that's the new ground we want to cover today that covers these 6 things. Who is a Brahmana? Is it the self? Is it the body? Is it the class? Is it the knowledge they possess? Is it the actions they engage in? And is it the virtue and vice that they possess? None of those would be a requirement necessarily for a knower of Brahman. Knower of Brahman would transcend all of those. And then we get into these circles, see, of points from the Upanishads. And I can take them, I can read them from the Upanishad later, but the way I was able to put them into these gold-lined circles. Who is a knower of Brahman? Who is, and this is what's coming up in the next slokas, who is free from the 6 passions? Who has gained success in dharmic living? But for instance, I mean, put all those 6 into any one of these statements that follows in the Upanishad. If he has a body, does that mean he's not a knower of Brahman? Well, if he's gained success in dharmic living, then he's got a body, right? So you have to apply all 6 of those points that the Upanishad's making to each one of these. Who is rich in mental control? So if he has knowledge, but he doesn't have mental control, you see what I mean? If he has mental control and he has even just a little bit of knowledge, that knowledge can be focused like a diamond needle to break through ignorance. Whereas other people might have huge amounts of knowledge, like scientists, for instance, or even pundits and priests, but they don't have that focus of mental control that's being mentioned here by the Upanishad. And Holy Mother was into teaching like that too. She said, if you can just understand one thing that Sri Ramakrishna said in his life and meditate on that alone, that'll be enough for you to penetrate through that ignorance that's a false superposition. But if you heard everything Sri Ramakrishna said and it overwhelmed you and you weren't able to concentrate deeply on a few things, then it might confuse you and take you off the track. So mental control, these are more to the points of the teachings of those who really are Brahmanas, and not the 6 that are usually taken and judged conventionally. And who has transcended all hypocrisy, who understands that Brahman is without a second, one and without a second. Ekam eva dvaitiyam. That's vaitahina to the Tantra. It must be a knower must be interested in non-duality. Who comprehends that the self is beyond virtue and vice, and who knows Brahman as bliss impartite. Nice word. So indivisible bliss. Again, all of those given quickly are part of the coming slokas, which I'm giving you in advance, and you can contrast them all and put these 6 that were mentioned up here in terms of these teachings. Let's just go on taking all of this. The more times we review it, the better, but we have to hear it at least once. So here's the next set of teachings extracted from those slokas of these Upanishad we're studying. The one who has realized the Brahman as clearly as a berry rested in one's hand is a knower of Brahman. That's called hasta amalaka in India. See my Atman as clearly as a fruit resting in the palm of my hand. It's called hasta amalaka. Hasta means hand. So that's also something you can say about a knower of Brahman. They have realized the Atman as clearly as a berry resting in one's hand, the Upanishad echoes. Who has transcended class, qualities, and actions. We just looked at those. Who is above and beyond influences of the six billows. I think last week we showed it here, and we can show it quickly again to illustrate that. Teaching of the six billows that it appears both in Buddhism and in Vedanta. There you see on the left-hand side the six billows: Mara, Jara, Brunti, Shoka, Pipasa, and Kshudha. That's in Buddhism. Death, old age, delusion, grief, thirst, and hunger are listed as those impediments or billows. Billows means like something that's obscuring, like the clear sky, like a cloud. And on the right-hand side, then you see Vedanta's list of it. That is birth, growth, disease, old age, decay, and death is what we who are studying the Vedanta brought by Swami Vivekananda to the West have heard of. The six transformations, it's called. Jayati, Asti, Vardata, Jara, Kshara, and Mara. So that here is shown. That one who is a knower of Brahman who has gone beyond the influences of the billows, six billows. So, of course, you can have a body and experience death, disease, old age, and birth, and so forth. But are they going to influence your thinking? Is the question. For millions and millions of people, that influence is called belief in birth and death, or belief in heaven and hell. No matter which way you go, which direction you look as far as conventional thinking goes, then there are millions of people who think that way. So that means they're influenced by these six transformations or these six billows. So you can see what a grand soul it is who possesses them but is not influenced by them. That is, my body was born, my body ages, I have disease, I got sick, and so forth and so on. I didn't pay any never no mind to it, you see. The disease went by, old age and death went by, and I was born again. I had a new body. And so this keeps them on the upper track of that process of birth, growth, disease, old age, decay, and death, which we'll look at next. Last weekend, not all of you saw this, or weekend before last, sorry, we had a seminar on this teaching that we're just looking at here, close to the six incarnations, six transformations, sorry. Then we saw this chart, you remember, as if you took the seminar. If you didn't, we can show it quickly again here. And remember, we're looking at it in terms of this transcendence of six billows. And also there's one in here that is at about birth and death, you see, have gone beyond birth and death, transcended birth and death. So that's why we want to show this. And one of Shankara's disciples put it: repeated births, repeated deaths, repeated occupation of various wombs. This transmigratory process is difficult indeed to cross. Therefore, the wise ones declare, save me, save me, save me, to the august destroyer of demons. That would be Lord Shiva in this case, as Nityanandacharya was a disciple of Shankara, where they were worshippers of Shiva. And there you see another verse in the white circles. Always good to repeat this. When I was a baby, I was attached to my mother's breast. When I was a young boy, I was attached to sport. When I was a young man, I was attached to a young woman. When I was middle-aged, I was attached to business, money, and success. When I was old, I was attached to anxiety due to the fear of death. And there you have the rounds of birth and death described very nicely in one sloka by Adi Shankaracharya in his beautiful hymn, Bhaja Govindam, Bhaja Govindam. We could sing it for you easily. And in the middle there, the orange circle, but to the Supreme Brahman, alas, I was never attached. So if a knower of Brahman is posed and posited by the Upanishad as not necessarily being defined by class or by action or by virtue or by knowledge and so forth, then now you can see why. Because the minds of these great beings from birth to death, through old age, disease, and decay, from cradle to the grave, have been focused upon Brahman. If my thoughts were on Brahman alone. And the world was unreal. I had to put it behind me. Get thee behind me, Jesus said. So when I saw the reality, I had to go to the light. If I couldn't see the light, my guru gave me the Vajrasuchika, a diamond needle by which I could find my way. A thunderbolt piercing through it with this incredible hardest substance in the world, in the spiritual world in this case, which is called non-dual wisdom. And there you see at the bottom, birth, growth, disease, old age, decay, and death, which were the 6 billows, 6 transformations back here. And the 3 stages of transmigration are there. Probably doesn't take you a lot of effort to think what they might be. They're in Sanskrit called bhuvaha, swaha. That's heaven, that's earth, heaven, and lower heaven and higher heaven, basically. And that means that there's transmigratory stages are going on between you and your ancestors and the intermediary realms that you're going through, the different bardos, if you want to use that word here. That's going on in a karmic wheel called samsara. And beyond those 3 are higher realms, beyond heaven, like the heart chakra would be a symbolic way of saying that, anahata chakra, or what we were just talking about here, the jnana chakshu, right? Now they know not who have not opened the eye of wisdom. Only they know who have opened the jnana chakshu. They see me coming and going. Utkramantam stitim vyapi bhujanam. Krishna says in the Gita about that. They know who've opened the inner eye of wisdom. Vimuda jnana chakshusha. They get rid of vimuda. That is, they get rid of the ignorance through the opening of the jnana chakshu. So something has to open it for some beings, right? So they need a diamond sword or a diamond needle, which to penetrate through those false superpositions of Maya on the rounds of birth and death and samsara. That's a pretty considerable soul who can penetrate through that and know himself to be ever free and never bound. So Shankara says in another verse, become released soon from this transmigratory process by the grace of your guru, your spiritual disciplines, and the presence of the deity who resides within your own heart. Beautiful that we have that triple tenet. Call it a triple gem in Advaita Vedanta if you want, because there's a triple gem in Tibetan Buddhism. So basically, this is what's going to start you out. Just get a good teacher. Do the practices the teacher tells you to, but always in accord with the deity who is already existing within your own heart. In other words, that thou art. I am Atma Brahma. This self is Brahman. If something has covered that, and there are plenty of things which can and do in the transmigratory realms, right? You're born here for whatever reason, hopefully to help others awaken and awaken yourself, then those 3 will come to your aid and will free you. So you could put it in the opposite way. I came here, realized the deity came with me. She's always with me. Then I did practice. My guru came and helped me remember that the self is Brahman, that the apparently individualized soul, the Jivatman, and the Supreme Soul, the Paramatman, are one and the same. They're identical. They always have been, and they always will be. That's all I was going to show of this chart because we had it 2 weeks ago in the seminar. And you can look up on if you join our website, it's called Ashram of the Subtle Realms. You can probably find these classes from the seminar and go through all the teachings that were in accord with them. Let's go back then to the Vajrasuchika chart because we only left it momentarily so that we could take up these attending charts. So right there we were at who is above and beyond the influences of the six billows. And we also took the next one without even knowing it, who has seen through the states of birth and death. So if you know that you've kept your mind on Brahman, then all of these phases of life will not take away your knowledge of Brahman, which is what this Upanishad is trying to tell us. Further, who is of the nature of Sat Chit Ananda, that is pure existence, pure knowledge, and pure bliss, one of the beautiful divine names for God in the Vedic religion, who is free from all limiting adjuncts, who is the basis of all thought. That would be, of course, intelligence. That would be sort of a given if you're the nature of Sat Chit Ananda, that the chit part of that would be this intelligence and this knowledge that you possess. So I exist, I know, and I'm blissful by nature, Sat Chit Ananda. That's going to be supported by the fact that the limiting adjuncts cannot influence you, as we were just saying, and further, that you are that intelligence, which is the basis of all thought. Who knows the self immanent in all creatures. So this is going to demand a further expansion of one's knowledge. We were talking about that when Sri Ramakrishna says that two kinds of great souls, Paramahamsas, one enjoys mangoes in secret, one brings them out and shares them with others. So there are some great souls that get their own liberation and then merge quickly, but other great souls will get liberated, like have the highest samadhi, and then keep the body. And so again, back to Upanishad's point here, they'll still have to have a class, they'll still have to have a body, they'll still have to have knowledge, they'll still have to do actions. And so it's kind of belaboring the point that great souls like that will come back, take those things on, not be influenced by the six passions, the eight fetters, and the six billows and the six transformations, and be able to give these teachings out to others. So in that accord, then, we're talking about beings who see the self in all, but also see that there are veils over these souls, over the Atman. So they want to help tear these veils off and open other people's third eye. So that's why they would have in hand this wisdom sword, or in this Upanishad's case, this Vajrasuchika, this diamond needle. If you can get one of those from a realized soul, then you want to keep that as your most prized possession. It said up here, that's what they carry with them through lifetimes. That will free them from all of these problems. And another way of looking at that is through this chart. This Upanishad is really good for referencing other charts that we've taken up in the past. And this particular one is coming here then from who knows that the self is immanent in all creatures. So let's segue over here now for that and see how to perceive the Atman in all, it says. The quote there is, all beings should hear at the outset that they are the Atman. Then, immediately, they must be taught the means to realize it. For on earth and in heaven, Atman lies hidden, like gold in mountain streams, like oil in sesame seeds. Those are quotes from the Upanishads. Until this self-realization dawns in the mind, one's firm avowal has to be, quote, I am not Atman until I realize I am Atman. And that's not a quote from the Upanishad. That's what one Swami told me when I was young, when I started to get into the path. You are not Atman until you realize you're Atman. It was very good advice to proceed carefully for the spiritual aspirant who's walking the razor's edge path. So on the right-hand side here, you can see what the Upanishad is just referring to, Atman reflecting in everything, right? So everything here doesn't just mean you have to get caught up in, is it in air, is it in fire, is it in water, is it in bodies, is it in senses, is it in books, is it in temples? But basically you can see here, these are major tattvas that they're talking about, that it's easy to see God or Atman or Brahman reflecting through all of these things. And if we wanted to take it from the top down, of course, the first thing we'd find would be Om, the word. Now, I'm doing research right now into what the word means, and not only in Hinduism, Vedanta, and yoga, but also in Christianity, Sufism, Islam, and Judaism, and how they think of this primordial principle of Om, the word, it's called. Probably the most familiar way of saying it, even to people who don't have spiritual leanings or interest or knowledge, would be the word, if you heard the word. So there is reflecting through the word. Atman also reflects through the Trinity next. That's in level of succession, if you're going inward, involution style. And then if you're coming out, then the next thing you would find in this staircase of tattvas is the Trinity, what we'd call Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. Also interesting in Christianity how the word and the Trinity go together. And then from the Trinity, of course, the avatars spring forth. This particular picture is our most recent appearance of India's avatar, Sri Ramakrishna, in Nirvikalpa Samadhi in that picture. And then under that, you see the ancestors would come. And then after that, humankind, and then the lokas and the universes themselves. These are steps down, or better said, out, from causal to subtle to gross. And then, of course, in our tradition, we have that safeguard and that blessing of being able to take it and go step back in. It's like you used rocks to jump across the brook when you were a child. And when you came back, were they gone? I say, no, you just retraced your steps back home by jumping over those same rocks to get across the brook. So tattvas inside of you are like that. There's these eternal principles that consciousness mans. So right now, a chart I'm putting together has to do with how Kundalini Yoga connects with Samkhya. That is how consciousness flows from tattva to tattva, like this. How does consciousness creates channels by which to flow into these various levels of existence. And there are some pretty considerable veils between these as the soul descends and as the soul ascends. And so every veil will part if you have this diamond needle with you. That's the non-dual wisdom, that I am Brahman. And that in this case, what we're saying here from the Upanishad is that Brahman is in all of these. So I just have to follow Brahman. And if there's a veil in front of it, then I'll use that wisdom to unveil it. And I'll see Brahman in that. Then I'll see Brahman in my ancestors. Then I'll see Brahman in the humankind. Then I'll see Brahman here on earth too. and in all the realms. And I can look back in and I can look back out and see nothing but Brahman. Joku Chahai is one beautiful Jafar sings very nicely. I've just realized that you are in everything, and everything is in you, O Lord. Svetashvatara Upanishad puts it this way: it should be known that energy assumes various forms, such as earth, water, light, air, and ether, at the command of the Lord of the Gunas. After setting cosmic cycles in motion and withdrawing itself from them, it mixes the principle of spirit with the principle of matter via the power it invests in the tattvas, using 1, 2, 3, 5, and 8-fold combinations. The primal power of that blessed overseer gives impetus to the fresh creation and thus orders all things. Then it withdraws the gunas, dissolves all forms, and remains aloof in its own essence. There's a nice couple sets of slokas from the Svetashvatara Upanishad, from the rishis Svetashvatara in ancient times, that would be very good to bring out and read over and over again, and then meditate on it, and then in its entirety, then meditate on it in its sentences, and then meditate on it in its words, like tattva. That word is there. These are all like these great cosmic tattvas. And air, earth, fire, water, and ether are these minor tattvas that everyone should know about here. We can take Gaudapada's words on this too. He says, in samadhi, the mind is Brahman, with illumination all around and free of superimpositions. There is this description of Brahman, quote, it is unborn, free of sleep, without dreams, devoid of names and forms, flashing up all at once. It is omniscient. It is like intense concentration without end, but transcendent of conceptualization. It is silent, with no words, completely calm, illumined once and for all, unmoving, and free from all fear. Probably, if I'm speaking to some knowers of Brahman right now, they're probably already in samadhi. You see, having heard Svetashvatara give his version, and I hear Gaudapada, the great Advaitist, give his beautiful teachings out of the Karika on the Mandukya Upanishad. So this is all Vedanta. Upanishad is Vedanta. Veda Anta means the Vedas, what came at the end of the Vedas, or the Upanishads, like this Vajrasuchika Upanishad we're taking up right now. That's why we're continuing to look at these minor Upanishads that Shankara didn't have the time to do in his 32-year-old life of perfect realization. So some of these points then are being read out to us as we go along. Let's see what else is here for us. Going on with this teaching right here, we just looked at who knows the self as immanent in all creatures. See, so this is what we're talking about, immanent in all creatures. We won't take the left-hand side, that's the subtitle, and we did that at a recent seminar as well. The next entry there is who is present inside and out, like space. So if you talk about earth, air, fire, water, then you talk about ether. Air is hard enough to see, of course, unless it's got some sort of contaminant in it. But ether is impossible to see no matter what. So ether becomes, of the 5 elements, the one best indicative of what Brahman's like. So, and then when you look into ether, you find out Sanskrit means akasha, that you find out there are 5 akashas in Vedanta, and 5 different kinds of space that go back in. That's where you'll find these tattvas, by the way, in these different levels of space. So you're going to have to look deep into ether to find these things that are hidden, like golden mountain lakes, mountain rivers, hidden like oil in sesame seed. As Sri Tashvatara said, you have to look inside for those deeply to find them. And who transcends lower knowledge, that's called aparavidya, arts and sciences and secular subjects and so forth, and also who has direct realization. So all of these points then have been read out to you and culled from the Upanishad itself. Let's then, now that we've taken a study of it and taken some of it apart, let's actually read it from the Upanishad itself. One who has directly realized, like a berry in the palm of the hand, the Atman without a second, devoid of class, quality, action, and of defects like the six waves, hunger, thirst, etc., free of the states of birth and death, of the nature of truth, knowledge, and bliss, free of all adjuncts, the basis of all thoughts, which is immanent in all creatures, present inside and outside like space, which is bliss undivided, as compared to ordinary knowledge, and which is also realized by experience alone, having become successful, free of lust, anger, greed, and envy, rich in mental control, untouched by hypocrisy, etc., is the Brahmana, is the knower of Brahman. So one should contemplate oneself as the spirit without a second, as truth, knowledge, and bliss. This is the Upanishad, and that ends the Upanishad. So we see that the first group of slokas were pretty much all about these problems that they were taking up, trying to describe who's the knower of Brahman. And then finally, after they take up those six contentions, then it turns to, well, we'll tell you who a knower of Brahman is, and you've got all of this. Let's see. And of course, then the Upanishad ends Om Apiyantu Mamangani Vak. So we might have read the entire Upanishad, but we haven't finished all the teachings yet that come there. Let's take the rest of this chart to guide us. Like we can take the quote at the top by Lord Vashishta. Like a thread twisted by strong fingers that still will not pass through the eye of a needle. If even the smallest fiber is sticking out, the soul's desire to merge with Brahman may have certain demands to straighten out before unalloyed dissolution to bliss can be attained. In other words, O Prince, Vashishtha is talking to Ram, the young avatar, that troublesome strand of relative existence present in the worlds of becoming must be placed between the moist lips of true fulfillment so that the tiny fiber of leftover karmic residue can be smoothed out completely in order to successfully thread the needle of penetrating wisdom for all times. So you can see the young avatar, Sri Ram, listening to this with wide eyes and open ears, and to get that same analogy of the threading this diamond needle. What's it going to take to possess that diamond needle? I'm going to have to thread it with after I make sure that I'm qualified to receive it. The smallest fiber sticking out of that, it will not pass through. You might not be able to even see that fiber. You smooth it out with moist fingers, he says. Still, you'd have to look at it with a magnifying glass up close to see why it's not going through the eye of the needle. Well, some of the more subtle things, the reason why, are listed there, and we've already gone through them. Ignorance presumes that Brahman is the soul, that the knower of Brahman is the body, that the knower of Brahman has caste, that the knower of Brahman has special knowledge, that the knower of Brahman is karmaless, that the knower of Brahman is virtuous. But of course, then the Upanishad turned around and told us who the true knower of Brahman is, and how many of these things cannot influence the soul and take away that knowledge of Brahman because they have that Vajrasuchika. Then the quote at the bottom right hand of this chart can be taken of. It's Swami Vivekananda's beautiful words. What I want is muscles of iron and nerves of steel, inside which dwells a mind of the same material as that of which the thunderbolt is made of. The strands of strength in manhood, called Kshatravirya and Brahmatejas in the Vedanta, must thread this particular needle. So there you have a couple needle thread and thunderbolt kind of ideas from these two great souls, Lord Vashishta, Swami Vivekananda, whom themselves, of course, possess to the nth degree. Probably many of these diamond needles they can give out to their great souls, like Vashishta to Lord Ram and Vivekananda to all the people who are sincerely studying the Vedanta in this day and age. Well, this quote of his, of course, also brings up a chart which we like to look at, which we haven't seen for a while. And that's this, he's talking about Brahmatejas and Kshatravirya, right? That is this great strength and manhood that's necessary to be able to wield such a subtle tool as the Vajrasuchika. And so it reminds us of this course in Atmic realization chart, which is we haven't seen for a while. Nonetheless, we can look at it here to illustrate some of these great teachings of this Upanishad. And there we have Swami Vivekananda's advice to us in this day and age. Have faith in yourself, because all power is within you. Be conscious and bring it out. Even if you are at your last breath, be not afraid, but work on with the intrepidity of a lion, but at the same time with the tenderness of a flower. That sounds like that poetic way in which the Upanishads get presented to us, and in this case by a modern great rishi of Mother India. And this quote here is what we just read. He wants nerves of steel, muscles of iron, and people who possess that thunderbolt, which drives this Vajrasuchika right into the heart of ignorance and dispels it. As I looked at that little kitty cat looking in the mirror and seeing a lion, it was a good image to put to Swami Vivekananda's great sayings. He had several sayings about lions, and he's become known as the Lion of Vedanta too. So we can read those in the quotes that are listed here. There are, let there be but a dozen such lion souls in each country, lions who have broken their own bonds, who have touched the infinite, whose whole soul has gone to Brahman, who care neither for wealth, nor power, nor fame, and these will be enough to shake the worlds. He's very much trying to encourage us. And the other quote here, also one of his lion quotes, Guru Bhakti is the foundation of all spiritual development. The Guru Bhakta will conquer the world. This is the one evidence of history. It is faith that makes a lion of a man. So his Vedantic lion taming, or his man-making course, as we read through many of his teachings, I found that these are the qualities that stood out when he was speaking particularly in that vein. There you see the list of them. This is Guru Bhakti, which he just mentioned, have a devotion in the great teachers. And then Shaktivadana, worship the Divine Mother. Then Kshatravirya, warrior-like strength. Brahmatejas, God-realized brilliance. Those two he mentioned particularly in his quote there. The strength of a thunderbolt. And then Ishtanishta, one-pointed focus on God. That's that concentration we were just talking about earlier. We said that you could have a lot of knowledge in your mind, but if you can't focus it, then you probably wouldn't be called the knower of Brahman. Then Abhaya, fearlessness. Ahimsa, non-aggression, non-violence, sometimes that's put. Tyaga, mature renunciation. Brahmagyan, supreme wisdom. Samastachita, the universal mindset. And Samadarshitvam, equal vision towards all, like we showed in this chart, seeing the same Atman in all beings. Whether it's realized or not, it's there, and try and bring it out. So here's a list of some of the great qualities, and we could center in on a couple of them, because again, we haven't seen this chart for a while either, but it's a chart on Ahimsa. He mentions here how non-aggression is important for that one who would wield this Vajrasuchika and penetrate this darkness of ignorance. Nice image there of the friendly elephant, friend of mankind, is receiving a nice kiss on his trunk. And also reminiscent of Ganesha, the elephant-headed god, who's all auspiciousness. And you could see there the chart is laid up here on Ahimsa in religion and philosophy, religion in morality, in karmic law, and in universal truth. So those are 4 different ways in which you can look at this principle of nonviolence, which is probably all not that evident or popular in this world, but we're trying to inculcate it into people's minds that ahimsa is one of the very highest of virtues, dharmic virtues. It's also mentioned as the first yama in yoga, unless of the 5 yamas. So truthfulness and nonviolence are called upon, enjoined on everyone if they want to understand the higher truths of spiritual life. And there you can see, as it appears in religion and philosophy, would mean they would say, commit no violence against race, culture, or living beings. Of course, true religion would stand behind that. Irreligion or conventional religion, often breaks that vow. And you see it, basically that's the commandment there. Maintain positive thoughts in order to benefit all creatures, because your thinking process can also cause harm to people, and does. Make conscious efforts to remove unnecessary suffering. That is, there is such a thing as necessary suffering that will happen because of one's karma, and people have to bear that. So that would be freeing yourself from the naivete that you can remove all suffering from the world, when the first truth is there is suffering here. That's just a fact to accept. Also, hold the mind always in forgiveness and forbearance. And really good 2 F words that go well with this principle of ahimsa. And this is, again, coming off of our main chart here about these Vedantic lion taming. You see that we're looking at, and how we're looking at right now of those collection and group of great qualities that he favors. We're looking at the one called Ahimsa. Just keep us on track with that. Then let's look at Ahimsa as it looks morally. Do no harm in thought, word, or deed. Never revert to war. Always seek peaceful resolutions. Yeah, good luck with that. In all ages here on the Burloka, of course, very difficult, but it has been possible to avert war. We only hear about those wars that have started and were incontrovertible, but basically there have been those that have been stopped before they got started. So we have to look at those examples and use these peaceful solutions to try and follow that law. Some say give up meat eating, or do moderate meat eating, or give up red meat. That's in the moral category. That's one way of also being nonviolent to all creatures. Never bind, restrict, or cause pain to humans or animals. Of course, when you talk about these deep moral laws, you begin to get into the religion of Jainism and Buddhism. They're the ones that have come forth mostly with very scrutiny, with great observance on the karma that comes from these kinds of actions, negative actions, and how to avert that. That is, how to neutralize one's karma and become nonviolent and helpful to all beings. And of course, never imbibe intoxicants such as alcohol and drugs. That's also put forth in both Jainism and Buddhism, and of course in India in general. It's in Western religion too, but it seems to get into the whole picture nonetheless. And so that's why if we want to understand Ahimsa fully, we should look at it as a philosophy, as what it consists of morally, and then here the next one, karmically. This is a four-dimensional teaching that's very important to fill out your wisdom and knowledge of what Ahimsa truly is and what it consists of and what it can be as a great law. Like I say, first of the 5 great laws in India, and it's also the head of the 10 Commandments. So I think it's probably time that we look at that and look at it fully, this four-dimensionally this way. So karmically, Ahimsa or nonviolence comes off looking very informative. Be aware that all acts involving destruction create karma. They call that even mortar and pestle. If you're grinding something in a household, you're always killing microorganisms or insects and things like that. Basically, there is a karma that comes from that, mounts up in the household and causes people to start getting into fights and fall into disharmony. There's a kind of karma that's lingering behind all of the acts that they're doing in the household. So that teaching is brought out too, to try and always neutralize that with your recitation of the God's names, that is mantra, with study of scripture, with your daily meditation, and with your doing of spiritual practices as a family, and if going to see your guru at the ashram, so forth, at the temple or church. All of these things will destroy that subtle karma, mortar and pestle karma that comes about by inadvertently stepping on a bug, if you want to put it that way, like the Jains say. So all of this has to be neutralized so that the spiritual path be made clear and clean and you don't hurt other living beings. Also, live in such a way as to minimize violence of all types. It's not going to be possible, therefore, to not inadvertently or unknowingly do some violence in some way to some being, and even to yourself, again, with your thoughts. but you should minimize that as much as possible. That is, consciously minimize it. Move to neutralize the effects of actions perpetrated by the self. So then that's where karma really comes into play, where good and bad actions, probably should say good, bad, mixed, or they often call that white, black, and colorless karma, needs to be looked at so that one's actions can be done only in that colorless karma. Not of myself do I do kind of karma that Sri Ramakrishna talked about. Also, the active part of karmic law is a vow to help living beings refrain from acts that cause bad karma. So there again, for instance, in war, if you were to try and present peaceful solutions like Sri Krishna did before the Kurukshetra war, he only appeared in it later. He didn't actually participate in any violence. That's what the Lord is like, transcendent of it. But if you read the Mahabharata before the Gita, you'll find all the ways in which he tried to mediate that war between the two clans, and so that it wouldn't come off causing karma to the world and to the people that perpetrated it. So all of that needs to be looked at deeper again in terms of this beautiful principle of ahimsa. And you can help others, neutralize their karma by talking them out of certain acts, whether it be on a cosmic level like that, collective level, or even an individual level with our friends and families. And vow to help living beings refrain from acts that cause bad karma is that point. Now, let's look at it in terms of universal truth, because that's a fourth part of this teaching that Vivekananda values again so much. And wants us to be ahimsa, consider that as a rule of existence. That will make us kshatriya virya. It'll give us brahma tejas, he says. It'll make us powerful and strong to against all negativities and be able to wield that Vajrasuchika well. And it'll also make us shine with the light of Brahman. And therefore we'll be able to see Brahman in ourselves and in all things. But the universal side of it is particularly interesting to people of a non-dual leaning. So these bullet points are: adhere to the law of ajati, wherein nothing is created and nothing is destroyed. So the non-dualist is looking at aparinama and ajati, basically. Change is apparent, it never really takes place. Nothing really transitions, nothing moves, nothing really exists, materially speaking. And it's everything is aparinama. Everything is immutable and just rising up and off the ocean like waves. It doesn't really have any effect. The movement of it amounts to nothing. It's only the ocean that's important. So that's why they look at ahimsa at that level. And so then they will apply that unchanging aparinama rule to the ajati, no birth, no death, which I just chanted. Nam mrityur na shanka, nam ajati beda. So adhere to the law of birthlessness and deathlessness, where nothing ever gets born, nothing gets hurt, nothing gets killed, nothing gets destroyed, no violence is ever committed. If you leave that universal law by itself without these other three, people won't accept it. But if you can bring this in and show them how there's a higher level of ahimsa as an ultimate truth, then maybe they'll get interested in following it morally, religiously, and individually. That's with their own karma. And they say, oh, I see that. Now I've heard the truth. Now I'm going to match myself up with the truth and get myself free of karma that's accrued by violence. Whole nations need to do that. If they drop bombs on other races and so forth, you don't think that has some effect somewhere in the world, some karmic effect? Second here, know for certain that the soul is birthless and deathless. So that would be a correlative to the first bullet point. that would be the knowledge of a jati, not just adhering to the law, but to know for certain that no birth and no death can come to the soul. It can come to the body, come to the brain, it can come to that which is made of matter and so forth. But even that is, as we're talking about now, matter is neither destructible nor indestructible. It's unoriginated, as my teacher used to say. Swami Sheshanandaji Maharaj, peace and blessings be upon him. They're finding out that matter is neither destructible nor indestructible. Actually, it's unoriginated. So it's just a rising and falling appearance. And it comes and goes and has been doing that for ages and ages and will continue to do that for ages. But who's watching that? Who's standing back and watching the rising and falling and not being affected by the six billows, and, the six passions and the eight fetters and suffering, karma that comes from violence and all that? There you'll find out that really starts to make transcendent sense out of everything. Third, know that freedom from harm and full protection attend upon all dedicated to Ahimsa. Interesting thing to watch those people who live lives based in nonviolence as compared to those people who are living life in war and in politics and dishonest actions and business and so forth, compared to those people who are free from those walks of life and who are adharmic. That is, who are dharmic opposed to the people who are dharmic. So that would be a great eye-opener for people to find out that these beings are always seem to be protected and that they don't harm anything and harm doesn't come to themselves from others. How does Krishna put that in the Gita? It has a beautiful way of saying it to declare the truth of Ahimsa even in this violent world. So basically that would be the final point of this universal side of Ahimsa, nonviolence. Right there's a quote. Far better than 1,000 hollow words is one word that brings peace. Violence does not change the world for the better, only love. Love is the law of eternal life. Those are wonderful words. And Krishna's ways in here. Know, O lover and seeker of truth, that all transformations and permutations take place in nature, not in the Atman. The soul is perfect, ever free of all change. There's where you get the verification from great souls that this birthless death, the soul is never born, never dies. No harm can be done to it, and it does no harm to others. Those are the beautiful truths of the matter. Krishna also says this to verify and further clarify. Those who think they are being killed and those who think they are killing, neither of these truly know. The Atman looks on as witness, ever unaffected by such ignorant assumptions. Otherwise, what he says above, all that is born in time dies, all that dies gets born again. The seers are never puzzled by this fact. So goes in accord with declaring the truth of Ahimsa, even in a violent world. It's that they've been watching for a long time these cycles, and they find out that it's not going on in themselves, it's going on in nature, number one. If you don't know the self, then of course it's going on in yourself, in your ego self, and therefore you're falling into the illusion of birth and death, the illusion of finitude. But those beings who have watched the cycle, like Lord Buddha talks about in the Dhammapada and so forth, they truly know the fact that the soul, the Atman, is always looking on as witness. And they're not affected by these ignorant assumptions of other people who have not seen the unmovable, undying, birthless self within. Therefore, hardly really a sidetrack, but nonetheless a good way of filling in Swami Vivekananda's Atmic lion taming, and also lion training that comes from this chart, the course of Atmic realization. And so I think this is a good place to wrap it up for our second class on the Vajrasuchika. We'll see next week if there is more to be seen out of this Upanishad, or if we maybe want to study another Upanishad, because we've taken up quite a bit of the Vajrasuchika. We have read all the slokas and come up in the end with this beautiful Upanishadic peace chant of Om Ampyantu Mamangani Vak. That is, may my limbs and speech, my life force flow, may my body live in great health, may my senses grow in strength of awareness, because Brahman is in all of those. Brahman is imperishable. And so I must never deny Brahman, nor may Brahman deny me. May there be no denial from me. And may all the virtues that are proclaimed in the Upanishads reside within me, who am devoted to the Atman. May they reside within us. May there be peace in me, may there be peace in our environment, and may there be peace in the forces that act upon me. Om, peace, peace, peace. That's Vajrasuchika Upanishad. And in terms of the beautiful teachings of Swami Vivekananda, we can end that way. Vimoksham svatvanas yogadvipabhiji pratagva samadhi hitam lokasyacha tavagyam sadayediti priyanaraha vivekanandate prabhate prabhavihi. Narendra Shashave, Narendra Yovane, Narendra Kridane, Narendra Shikshane, Narendra Palane, Narendra Yarpane, Vivekanandate, Prabhate Pranjali. Om Jananim Sharadam Devim Ramakrishnam Jagadgurum Pado Padme Toye Shitwa Pranamami Muhur Muhur. O Ramakrishna, teacher of all, O Sharda, goddess divine, in bosom holding those lotus feet, salutations to both, ever be of mine. Om Shanti, 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 Hari Om, Hari Om.